Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast with Mike and Mike. Sales is a thinking process. This podcast will help you learn about what works in sales, how to hone your skills, and increase your success. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry. We have both Mike Simmons and Mike Connor with us this week. Last week, we talked about discounts, and as I was listening to that episode, I realized that Mike Connor and Mike Simmons have different opinions about the importance of personal relationships in sales. Mike and Mike, would you say that's true?
I think we're about to find out. It was interesting when you pinged us and said, "Hey, I noticed this from our last recording that you guys seem to have differing opinions." I don't know if it was just the way we were making points or if we actually do have some fundamental differences in thinking, but I think it was worth putting out there because at least initially we seem to have some differing opinions.
And considering that Mike's the hugger, I'm figuring that he's really high on the idea of relationships in sales.
That's a nice teaser to get this thing rolling, but it'll be interesting to see if that's actually true. You might be the closet hugger.
Well, I don't want you two to just stand there like gunslingers waiting for the other to make a move. So let's just find out, what is the place of personal relationships in sales, in the process, with clients, with people? Connor, let's have you go first, since you were accused of being the hugger.
I think I still am the hugger, but so I think the reason this came up was because I had noticed some activity, some blog posts and some discussion threads around how important it is to be friends with your prospective clients, and that what was going to make or break you as a salesperson was, whether or not you were able to develop a personal relationship with people. And I kind of called BS on that, and that, I don't think people are looking to make friends in business. I think they're looking to solve problems, and they're looking to make wise investments, and that whether or not they're your friend at the end of the day, I think they could care less. That was my controversial opening thought.
Mike is actually going to make me cry.
Yeah.
So I'd counter that and say that those relationships that you develop, although you may not develop them with all customers, the ones that you do develop with customers over the long run tend to be your best customers. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to realize here, it's different based on the complexity and scope of what you do for somebody in a company. If you're selling a transactional product where you're here today, gone tomorrow, and everything is good, you're probably never going to talk to that person ever again. What I was really drilling into was this idea that you think of I don't want to call out we have a vendor partner that we work with right now. And I don't want to call them out because I actually really like them as a company. But what I saw was the sales behavior that was being described that I kind of took issue with, which is that first line salesperson, we'll use the term an SDR because that seems to be a pretty common term that everybody's familiar with, but a sales development rep, their job is to get people through the door, get them qualified enough that they're worthy to talk to an account executive. And then the account executive kind of runs with the qualified opportunities and gets into more detail about what your opportunity looks like, what the problem is you're solving, blah, blah, blah. And they take it deeper into the sales process. And the premise that I was reading about was this idea that as an SDR, the first thing you want to do is make friends with people. And some of the examples provided were, follow them on Twitter, make small chat, just do things that you would do if you're meeting a friend for the first time. And the issue I had with that was that if I'm looking to solve a problem with my business, I want to know how they can help me solve that problem. I don't want to become their friends on Facebook, and I don't even go on Facebook anymore, but I don't want to be their buddy on LinkedIn. I want to know how they can help my business, and they need to be a reasonable person to deal with. I mean, I don't want to deal with somebody that's difficult, but at the same time, I'm not looking for friends. I'm looking to solve problems. And so I thought there was way too much value placed on how likable you are as a person versus what problems you can solve for a person.
Well, and it gets into that whole idea of what game are you playing? Like, is the game, I'll follow you, you follow me back, I'll follow a couple of your friends, you like some of my posts, I'll like some of your posts. I mean, those aren't deeply rooted friendships. There's not a high level of trust. They're just surface level engagements where if you've got one of those engagements and I give you a call and say, "Hey, Jody, I see that you're connected with so-and-so. can you help me connect with that person? And your first response is, wow, you know what? I don't even remember how I connected with that person. And then maybe you're falling into the trap of the surface level stuff. When I think about relationships, or so the perspective I would take with relationships when it comes to sales, is in some of those more complex, longer sales cycles. And some of them can be short sales cycles, but there are multiple groups inside an organization that you're going to be working with, and you've got to generate some consensus. If you're not able to build rapport, if you're not able to build a relationship that has a foundation of trust, you're going to have a really difficult time understanding what's happening inside that organization. There's going to be you're going to have some significant blind spots or significant things that you're not exposed to. And the way that I've been able to overcome those for me personally is by building that relationship, building that level of trust where the customer looks at me as an extension of their team inside their organization. And that is absolutely not something you do in a transactional sale. I mean, you just don't have the time. You don't have the time, energy, resources to be able to put that in. So like most things, it kind of depends. Everything has a place. So let's
get back to our original argument. Because you have a relationship with somebody and say you worked with them for 5 years, and you send each other notes when it's your kids' birthdays.
Yep.
Like you are tight as tight can be, right? Good buddy. Will that person, if they get a new job at a company, how much value is that relationship going to deliver for you? Is, on a continuum of, I'll introduce you to the right person to shoe in, we're going to do business with you, Mike, because we're buddies.
Well, I mean, I could drop direct examples of where that's happened, where no, because I'm not going to bring up individual client examples.
No.
But but there are instances where, and if he's one of the people who listens to the podcast, hello, and he knows. I mean, we had the relationship with one organization, went over to another organization, brought us into that organization. So it depends. So if they go in and they're moving into the same role, or they're moving into an escalating role inside this new organization, they have the same challenges inside that organization, at least their perception. It may not happen overnight because they've got to go through the change management stuff that happens inside the company. But if they identify the same problems, they know that we're able to deliver a solution, or they even have that level of trust of saying, hey, when I've worked with Mike before, and we've had conversations around this, he's been able to help me find a solution, whether it's the product that I'm selling that day or in that season of my life, or it's a product that somebody else I know is selling. We're going to help make that connection. So maybe it's less about the relationship and about the networking and the connections where you can help people connect the dots between their problem and the solution you're delivering. But in that instance, again, using the specific one, if I'm working with someone who is the chief information officer at an organization, let's say in the semiconductor space, and they go in and they take over a CIO role inside a larger semiconductor organization,
right,
you can rest assured there will be a conversation at some point in time with that person, and I will have a better shot at getting a deal done inside that organization than if I didn't have that relationship.
Right. And I agree with that. I think where I'm coming at this from is I'm a sales rep, early career sales rep. I'm selling SaaS solution number one to a myriad of buyers, which I'm trying to become buddies with. And then I go work for SaaS company number two, and I have this contact, won't even call it a Rolodex because nobody knows what a Rolodex is anymore, but I've got a database. I've got 12,000 LinkedIn followers, and they're all my friends. And now I'm going to go sell solution B at another SaaS company. I'm going to make the rounds across all my great friends. And the idea that just because you're connected with and because you had a transaction or a brief relationship with somebody at company A, that because you have that relationship, you should feel like you're going to do business at company B.
It's not even about feeling. It's a kind of a BS scenario in that if I have that relationship and I've sold the product to that person, and then I go and move to another company. So now let's say I'm selling the competitor's product.
No, I'm not talking about competitor, just different product.
Okay. So completely different space, different vertical. Okay. So in that instance, maybe the need isn't the same. If the need's not the same, if the problem's not the same, then yeah, I'm going to have a hard time. It's not really going to help me there. But I mean, I've seen the scenarios, and I know you've seen them too, because we laugh at them when they happen, but it's I'm going to bring my Rolodex. So I'm working at company X in the e-learning space. And this happened when I first started getting into ed tech. You'd see people rotate, and I'll name the companies. They'd rotate between Skillsoft and SmartForce and NetG and Element K. And it was a rotating golf shirt kind of thing. And some of those clients moved with the reps. I mean, it happened. But the question I would always ask is, if they sold you product A first and you bought into the value and the benefit and the impact that it's going to have inside your organization, and now just because they changed their golf shirt, they think product B is so much better, what's really changed? And if you're not asking those questions, if you're just being led by the sales rep, then you're in trouble and you're putting too much credit in that individual. But yeah, I think there are different scenarios. I mean, it's the tough part about SaaS stuff is you can be in a SaaS space, move into a completely different technology, and the network and the people that you've worked with may not be the buyer for that technology anymore. So it's not going to help you with that part of the sale. But I would still go back to those people and say, I think based on what we've discussed about your organization, what I understand about your company, I think that this could be a good fit. And here's the person, here's the role that we usually speak with. Can you help me find that person inside your organization? If I've got a solid relationship where I've built trust over time, the odds are that person's going to be able to help me out. Now, I did that the other day asking about another organization, and the feedback I got was there's 50,000 people inside our organization. I don't even know where to start. So hey, sometimes it works, but there are many times it doesn't.
Yeah. So I think if I had to, because I feel like we're talking about different scenarios, different contexts, like we're all over the map here talking about this and getting away from, I think, maybe what was supposed to be my original nugget, which is I agree with everything you're saying on the importance of developing relationships, of knowing and networking and adding value and having people introduce you to other people because they trust you and because you've had success with them. I agree with all of that. I think the thing that the point I really want to try and make here, and we'll see if you agree with this or not, but that a relationship doesn't entitle you to do business with somebody, but it'll get you into the discussions. And so what I was reading in some of these posts was the idea that, hey, if I'm likable and we can connect, then that's going to be the thing and the reason that you'll do business with me. And I just think I don't think that's valid. I do agree with the things that you're talking about. And let's face it, that's how we've been able to build this company. I mean, it hasn't been based on internet marketing. It hasn't been based on, sorry, Jody, I know the podcast is awesome, but it's not like what drives our business. It's not because we invest tons of money in email blasts and automated marketing. It's because we know people and because people have worked with us before and they trust what we do and they know what our capabilities are. So absolutely, relationships make all the difference. I think what you have to realize is that relationships, like I said, they'll get you into the discussion. They won't guarantee the business because at the end of the day, if something doesn't make sense financially, they're not going to buy from you. It's that simple.
And what's funny is we even have a scenario where we had someone buy something that didn't make sense because the price point was so low and they were such a large organization where it was just easier to pay the money, implement it, and let it roll. But again, we're not going to go into that. We won't go into that scenario. But Mike is laughing on the other end because he knows the scenario. I think to just
you know what? That's a good point. Here's another point to make about this whole topic. Do relationships ever get you into trouble as a salesperson?
Sure.
I'm not talking about that exact scenario, but I can think of many times when you put too much emphasis on the relationship, not just to get business, but they also, on the flip side, put too much value or take advantage of the relationship and where you end up doing bad business.
Right. You get blinded by certain things. So, and we've talked about it. At some point, we're going to talk about blind spots, and they keep coming up here. And I think it'll be a good topic for us to discuss at some point. But to take Mike's point a little bit further and kind of reinforce where we're aligned here, we agree relationships are important. Relationships do not entitle you to the business. And if you're trying to take shortcuts or try the newest trick by following somebody and liking some of their content and then following them back and then retweeting their stuff and then thinking that that's what's going to get you a business, it's a trick. It's a tactic. It is something that might help you in some scenarios, but over the long term, those platforms are going to change, where people are engaging are going to change. So get back to the fundamentals. And that's what we talk about. Mike had mentioned on one of the previous ones about why we started the podcast. We talk about the fundamentals in sales and what works and how you can hone your skills and improve the way that you sell to your customer base. Understand your customer, know what the challenges they're running into, or know what their challenges are inside their business, know what keeps them up at night, so to speak, what they're struggling with, what they don't know the answers to. Help them find the answers. And if your solution happens to be the thing that helps solve that problem, you probably have a better shot at getting business done than if they're just your neighbor.
Mike and Mike, you two are the sales professionals here, but I have a comment that I think falls somewhere in between what the two of you are saying. I don't think that you liking me will entitle me or get me the business, but I certainly think that you not liking me will lose the business. And so I think that's where the relationship comes into it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point, Jody. I think that's why we pay you the big bucks, because you're able to distill the babble between Mike and I to get down to some key nuggets there. And that is a key nugget. I would say, though, that even on the extreme, if I can think of many times where I have actually bought a product from a company in spite of the salesperson, like they aggravated the crap out of me, but I still bought. And it's because it solved my problem. And unfortunately, that happens. And that person becomes the model salesperson for that company. And they're like, hey, let's train everybody to be more like, him. No.
Well, and to be clear, those are usually in technology solutions or in a product that's being delivered, not necessarily a service, right? I mean, you wouldn't buy a service from a company where the person you're dealing with is. No,
if I knew it wasn't just to facilitate a transaction, I was actually going to have to work with that person, then no, I'd find a way to work with somebody else in that organization. Which, by the way, that totally related but unrelated. I saw another thread that was interesting, and it was talking about the anger of a sales rep because he had invested so much time in a relationship in an account and did all the right things, did all the likes and shares, and thought he was on bro status and all this stuff. And then was absolutely mystified when the client ended up booking their business through their self-service portal. And he didn't get credit for it. It's like, wait a second, I did all this work. I did all this heavy lifting. In the back of my mind, I thought, okay, sometimes, maybe you feel like you're doing all the right things, but through all of your efforts of trying to build a relationship, that buyer recognized they wanted to buy from the company, but not from you. And I would take that as maybe a signal that if you find that happening over and over again, ask them why they wouldn't come to you. And I've had that happen too on inbound, outbound scenarios where the outbound person did all this work, and then all of a sudden it comes in as an inbound and somebody else ends up with the deal. And a lot of times you'll find out, it's good that you had other channels that a customer could come in through, because if they had to rely on just that one person, they may not have, concluded a transaction at all. But looking at the forensics of, why did the customer do that? Like if they valued you, they would have called you directly. Why would they go on the web and try and figure out how to do it around you when they have your number and your email? Why wouldn't they just call you directly?
Right.
So,
well, and random thought. And that might, adding to the random thoughts, another one of these topics we might want to get into is, what happens when you actually have to remove a sales rep off of an account and put a different sales rep in there? And it's not a situation where you're actually letting the sales rep go, but they're just not the right fit for the client. I mean, that stuff happens, and that's relationship, bad relationship, but that stuff happens.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Mike and Mike, this was good. It got lively. And I have to admit, if I would have picked before having this conversation, I would have guessed Connor to be more in favor of the relationship and Simmons to be more in favor of the transaction. But we went almost the other direction.
It's like you don't even know me, Jody.
I know. This is like we're starting all over again. Well, thank you so much, Mike and Mike. Do you have any final thoughts on this before we wrap?
Yeah, I would say you'll continue to engage with us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We're both on there, mconnoraz for Mike Connor and Simmons_M for me. At Catalyst Sale, also on Twitter. It'd be really interesting to get a dialogue or get a discussion going about the importance of relationships in sales and hear the perspective of the audience. So if you've got thoughts, send us a note via Twitter or LinkedIn and we'll engage with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for listening to the Catalyst Sale Podcast.